The abandoned car had been sitting at the trailhead all day, but the engine was still warm when we checked it. I got the call just before dusk, flagged by a visitor who said the vehicle hadn't moved in hours. It was parked crooked, half off the gravel, like someone had stopped in a hurry. Dispatch asked me to take a look. I was closest. Routine check, nothing unusual at first. When I pulled up, I noticed the driver's door was slightly open. Not wide, just enough to catch the wind and tap lightly against the frame. The sound was rhythmic, too steady. I stepped out and called it in, gave the plate number. Dispatch said the car was registered to a local resident, no outstanding issues. No missing person report. Yet. I approached slowly. Habit. You don't assume anything, even with something this simple. The interior looked normal at a glance. Backpack on the passenger seat, water bottle in the cup holder. Phone mount on the dash, empty. But when I touched the hood, it was still warm. Not hot, but definitely not cold. That didn't line up with the report. If it had been there all day, it should have cooled hours ago. I radioed that detail in. Dispatch paused, then asked if I was sure. I said yes. I've checked enough vehicles to know the difference. They told me to proceed with caution and wait for backup. I agreed, but I didn't step away. Something about the setup felt wrong. I leaned in closer and noticed the keys were still in the ignition, turned halfway, not fully off. That explained the warmth, maybe. But then I checked the battery indicator. It was dead, completely drained. No lights, no response when I tried the door lock. That didn't make sense either. I stepped back and scanned the area. The trailhead was quiet. No other cars, no hikers. Just that low hum of insects starting up as the light faded. I called out, standard protocol. Park ranger, if anyone's nearby, respond. Nothing. No movement. I grabbed my flashlight and checked the ground around the car. Footprints were visible in the dust. One set leading away from the driver's side, heading toward the trail. Deep impressions, recent, but there was something off about them. The spacing was uneven, like the person had been dragging one foot slightly. I followed the prints a few steps, then stopped. There was a second set, fainter, older, leading from the trail back to the car. Different tread pattern, smaller size. I radioed that in. Dispatch asked if I wanted to initiate a search. I said I'd wait for backup first. They told me Ranger Ellis was 10 minutes out. I stayed by the vehicle, watched the trail entrance. Every few seconds I'd hear that door tap again. Open, close, open, close. Same rhythm. It started to get under my skin. I finally pushed it shut completely. The sound stopped. Silence settled in. Too quiet. A minute later, my radio crackled. Static. First, then a voice. Mine. Dispatch, I'm heading up the trail. Subject likely injured. I froze. I hadn't said that. Not now. Not at any point. I looked down at my radio. It hadn't transmitted. No indicator light. Dispatch came through immediately after. Unit 7, confirm your last transmission. My mouth felt dry. I told them I hadn't made one. There was a pause. Then they said they'd logged it under my ID. Exact timestamp, same voice, same phrasing. I stepped away from the car. Something was wrong in a way I couldn't explain. Ellis pulled up a few minutes later. He saw my expression and didn't joke about it like he usually would. I filled him in quickly. The car, the footprints, the transmission. He listened, then checked the vehicle himself. Same observations, same confusion. We decided to follow the tracks. Standard procedure. Possible injured hiker. We couldn't ignore that. We marked the location and started up the trail. The prints were easy to follow at first, clear in the dust. That uneven stride again. Slight drag on the right side. Ellis pointed it out, said it could be a sprain. I nodded, but I was thinking about the voice, about how it had sounded exactly like me, about how dispatch had confirmed it. We moved at a steady pace, not rushing, but not slow either. The trail curved through a dense section of trees about half a mile in. That's where the light dropped off faster. Our flashlights came on almost at the same time. The beam cut through the darkness in narrow cones. The air felt cooler here. Still, like the wind didn't reach this part. Ellis asked if I'd noticed that before. I said no. We kept going. About 10 minutes in, the prints changed. They became less consistent. Shorter steps. More drag. Then, suddenly, they stopped. Just ended. No turn, no deviation, no sign of where the person had gone. Ellis crouched down and examined the ground. He brushed away some loose dirt, looking for hidden impressions. Nothing. It was like the person had just vanished mid-step. We both stood there for a moment, trying to make sense of it. Ellis suggested maybe they'd stepped onto a rock or harder surface, but there wasn't anything like that nearby, just dirt and roots. I scanned the area with my light. That's when I saw it. About 15 feet off the trail, partially hidden behind a fallen log, was a small clearing, and in the center of it, another set of footprints, standing still, facing the trail. I pointed it out. Ellis saw them too. We approached slowly. The prints were deep, same tread as the ones from the car, same uneven pressure. But these weren't moving. They were just there. Like someone had stood in that exact spot for a long time, watching the trail, watching us, maybe. Ellis looked around the clearing. No tent, no gear, no person. Just those prints. I felt that tightness in my chest again. The same feeling I'd had at the car, like we were missing something obvious. My radio crackled again. Same static. Then, the voice. "Dispatch, I've located the subject. They're not alone." I didn't even need to look at Ellis to know he'd heard it too. He stepped back slightly, scanning the trees. I grabbed my radio and called dispatch. Asked if they'd received that transmission. They said yes. Logged it under my ID. I told them again it wasn't me. Their tone changed. Less routine, more alert. They asked for our exact location. I gave it. They said to hold position and wait for additional units. I looked at Ellis. He shook his head slightly. We both knew staying put might not be the best idea, but leaving felt worse somehow. Like turning our backs on something we didn't understand. Ellis suggested we check the perimeter of the clearing. Quick sleep, then we decide. I agreed. We moved in opposite directions, keeping each other in sight. The ground was uneven. Roots sticking out, loose soil, easy to trip if you weren't careful. As I circled around, I noticed something else. More footprints, faint, older, surrounding the clearing. Not one set, several. All facing inward, toward that central spot. I stopped and called Ellis over. He saw them too. His expression tightened. "This isn't just one person," he said. I nodded. My mind was racing, trying to piece it together. Why would multiple people stand in a circle like this? Why leave no other signs? No camp, no trash, nothing. Just footprints. The radio crackled again. Louder this time, clear. "Unit 7, you need to leave. Now." It was my voice again, but the tone was different, urgent, almost strained. Ellis looked at me. "That one sounded real," he said. I didn't argue. It did. Too real. Like it was coming from somewhere close. Not through the radio. We both turned toward the trail at the same time, and that's when we saw it. The car. The same one from the trailhead. Parked right in the middle of the path. Engine off, lights off. Just sitting there, half blocking the way. There was no sound of arriving, no headlights cutting through the trees. It was just suddenly there. Ellis swore under his breath. We hadn't been gone long enough for someone to move it. And even if they had, we would have heard it. The trail wasn't wide enough for silent driving. We approached slowly. Same as before, same caution. The driver's door was open again, tapping lightly against the frame. Open, close, open, close. Same rhythm. I felt a chill run down my spine. Ellis checked the ground around it. New tracks, fresh, leading from the clearing to the car. Same uneven stride, same drag, but again, no return tracks. I leaned in and looked inside. Everything was exactly the same as before. Backpack, water bottle, keys in the ignition, dead battery, nothing disturbed. Ellis asked if we should check the trunk. I nodded. He moved to the rug. Back and opened it slowly. Empty. Completely empty. No spare tire, no tools, nothing. Just bare metal. We stood there for a second, trying to process it. Then my radio crackled one last time. No static this time, just a clear, calm transmission. Dispatch. Both units are accounted for. Returning to trailhead. I felt my stomach drop. Because I hadn't said that. And neither had Ellis. We both turned slowly toward each other. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. We started backing away from the car at the same time, not turning our backs on it, not yet. The door kept tapping. Open, close, open, close. Then, without warning, it stopped. The door swung shut on its own, hard. The sound echoed through the trees. We didn't wait after that. We moved, fast, back down the trail, past the point where the footprints had ended, all the way to the original trailhead. And when we got there, the parking area was empty. No car. No sign it had ever been there. Just our vehicle, exactly where we'd left it. Dispatch called in, asking for status. I tried to answer, but my voice caught in my throat. Ellis took over, gave a brief report. Left out the parts that didn't make sense. They told us to return to the station and file everything. We did. That night, I went back through the logbook, checked every entry, every timestamp. Everything lined up, except one. Right between my initial call and Ellis arriving, there was an entry in my heart. Handwriting that I didn't remember making. It read, "Vehicle secured, proceeding alone." I stared at it for a long time. Then I flipped back to the previous page. That's when I noticed the indentation from a line that had been erased. I angled it under the light and could just make out the impression. Same handwriting, same pressure. And it said, "He's already at the trailhead." The fire tower camera showed someone standing at the top, but the tower had been locked for months. I was on evening duty when the alert popped up on the monitor. Motion detection, Zone 4, Tower Ridge. That camera barely ever triggered. It overlooked a closed section of the park, an old burn area that was still unstable. I leaned closer to the screen. Grainy image, low light, but clear enough to see a figure standing near the railing at the top of the tower. Not moving. Just there. I checked the timestamp. Live feed, not a recording. I radioed dispatch and asked if anyone had authorized access to Tower Ridge. They said no. That trail had been closed since the landslide 2 years back. No permits. No maintenance crews scheduled. I zoomed in. The figure didn't react. No shift. No turn. It almost looked like they were facing the camera directly, but the angle made it hard to tell. I grabbed the logbook and checked the last entry for that zone. Nothing since last week. Routine patrol. No anomalies. I called in Ranger Patel. He was finishing up a supply inventory in the back. I told him what I saw. He didn't say much. Just grabbed his jacket and came over. We watched the screen together. The figure was still there. Same position, same posture. Patel asked if it could be a trick of the light. I shook my head. The shape was too defined, too steady. Dispatch came back and asked if we wanted to send a team. I wanted to get back. Said we'd go ourselves. It was just the two of us on shift anyway. We geared up fast. Radios checked. Flashlights, sidearms, standard protocol. The drive to Tower Ridge took about 15 minutes. Dirt road most of the way. Narrow, uneven. The sky was already darkening, that deep blue just before full night. As we got closer, I kept glancing at the GPS. The camera feed was still active, still showing movement detection, which meant whatever was up there hadn't left. Patel drove. Quiet, focused. He finally asked what I thought we were dealing with. I said probably a trespasser, maybe someone looking for a view. He didn't sound convinced, neither was I. We reached the trailhead and parked. The gate was still locked. Same chain, same padlock, no signs of tampering. I checked it twice. Solid. That meant whoever was up there didn't come through the main access, or they had a key. Neither option felt good. We started up the trail on foot. It wasn't maintained anymore. Overgrown in spots. Loose soil from the old slide. Every step had to be careful. Our radios worked fine at first. Clear signal. Dispatch checking in every few minutes. About halfway up, the air changed. Cooler. Still. Like the wind had just stopped following us. Patel noticed it too. He pointed out how quiet it had gotten. No insects. No birds. Just our boots on gravel. We kept moving. The tower came into view through the trees, tall, rusted in places. Surrounded by a short fence that was also locked. I shined my light up toward the top. Couldn't see anyone. But the angle from below was different from the camera. Patel tried the gate, locked just like the one at the trailhead. He circled the fence, checking for any openings. Nothing obvious. I radioed dispatch and asked them to confirm the camera feed. They said the figure was still visible, still not moving. I looked back up, still nothing from our position. Patel suggested we climb over. Not standard procedure, but neither was this situation. We picked a spot where the fence was slightly bent and got over without too much trouble. The ladder to the tower was intact, old but usable. I tested the first rung, held my weight. Patel went first. I covered from below. He climbed slowly, checking each step. The metal creaked under him. I followed after a few seconds. The climb felt longer than it should have. Maybe because I kept expecting to see someone looking down at us. About halfway up, Patel stopped. I nearly ran into him. He didn't move. I asked what was wrong. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Do you hear that?" I listened. At first, nothing. Then a faint sound, like fabric moving, or someone shifting their weight. Coming from above, we both looked up. Still couldn't see the top clearly, just shadows in the outline of the platform. Patel kept climbing, slower now. More careful. I stayed right behind him. When he reached the top, he pulled himself over the edge and froze. Completely still. My stomach dropped. I climbed the last few rungs and stepped onto the platform beside him. It was empty. No one there. Just the railing, the old observation equipment, and a small folding chair placed near the edge, facing outward. Patel walked over to it, touched the backrest. It was warm. Not hot, but definitely not cold. Like someone had been sitting there recently. I scanned the area. No bags, no supplies, no signs of a camp. Just that chair. And something else. On the floor near the center of the platform was a small handheld radio. Not one of ours. Different model. I picked it up. It was on. Screen lit, no active transmission, but the speaker emitted a faint static hum. Patel asked if I recognized it. I didn't. He suggested it might belong to the trespasser. I nodded, but something felt off. The camera mounted on the corner of the tower was angled directly at the chair. I looked at it, then back at the empty space where the figure had been. I radioed dispatch and told them we were at the top. No one present. They hesitated, then said, "We still have visual." My chest tightened. I asked them to describe what they were seeing. They said a person standing near the railing, facing the camera. I turned slowly toward the railing. Nothing there, just open air and the drop below. Patel stepped closer to me. "What are they looking at?" he whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't have one. Dispatch asked if we had visual confirmation of the subject. I said negative. They went quiet for a second, then told us the figure had just moved, taken a step forward, toward the camera. I stared at the lens mounted above us. It was fixed, no pan or tilt, which meant whatever it saw should have been right in front of it, right where we were standing. Patel reached out and waved his hand in front of the camera. "Do they see that?" he asked. I relayed the question. Dispatch said they saw nothing change. The figure was still there, still not reacting, still separate from us somehow. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the air. I looked back at the chair, then at the radio in my hand. A thought started forming, but I didn't like it. Patel asked what I was thinking. I said maybe the feed was delayed or corrupted. He shook his head. "That's live," he said. "You saw the timestamp." He was right. I turned the handheld radio over, checked the back. No markings, no ID, just a scratched surface like it had been used a lot. Suddenly, it crackled. Both of us flinched. A voice came through, low, distorted, but recognizable. It was mine. "Unit 5, I'm at the top. I see them." Patel stared at me. I felt my throat go dry. The radio went silent again. I hadn't said that. Not now, not ever. I radioed dispatch. Immediately. Asked if they had just received a transmission from me. They said no, only from my current unit, nothing else. I looked back at the handheld. Patel took a step back from it. "That didn't come from dispatch," he said. I nodded. We both knew it. I asked dispatch to replay the last few seconds of the camera feed. They said they couldn't rewind live, but they described what they were seeing. The figure had raised its arm, slowly, like it was pointing at something. I looked at the empty air in front of the camera, then at the railing, then back at Patel. He was already backing toward the ladder. "We need to go," he said. I didn't argue. We moved fast, down the ladder, over the fence, back onto the trail. Neither of us spoke for the first few minutes, just focused on getting distance. About halfway down, our radio started to crackle. Static at first, then fragments of voices, overlapping. Some of them sounded like us. Snippets of things we'd said earlier that night, out of order, out of context, like recordings being played back at the wrong time. Patel tried to switch channels. Didn't help. The noise followed us. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. Silence again. We reached the trailhead and got back to the vehicle. I looked up at the tower one last time. From that distance, I could see the platform clearly. And for a brief second, I thought I saw movement. A shape near the railing. But when I blinked, it was gone. We drove back to the station without saying much. Dispatch kept asking for updates. We gave them the basics. Trespasser not located, equipment found, possible interference with camera feed. They told us to log everything and stand by. When we got back, I went straight to the monitor. The camera feed was still up, still active. And there it was again. The figure, standing at the top of the tower, facing the camera, not moving, exactly where it had been before we arrived. Patel stood beside me. Neither of us spoke. After a while, he asked if we should go back. I said no, not tonight. He didn't argue. I pulled up the archived footage from earlier, scrolled back to when the alert first triggered. The figure appeared at exactly 1942. No approach, no climb. Just there from one frame to the next, like it had always been there, and the camera just decided to notice. Patel leaned closer to the screen. "Zoom in," he said. I did. The image pixelated, but the outline became clearer. Same stance, same proportions, same uniform shape. My uniform shape. I felt my stomach drop, because the more I looked at it, the more it matched me. Same height, same build. Even the way the shoulders slouched slightly forward. Patel must have seen it too, because he stepped back. "That's not a trespasser," he said quietly. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Dispatch called in again, asking for final confirmation of status. I picked up the radio, hesitated for a second, then said we had no visual on the subject, and were securing the station. My voice sounded normal, steady, controlled. But as I set the radio down, the handheld unit we brought back from the tower, the one we'd placed on the desk, suddenly came to life again. Same static, same distorted tone. Then it spoke. "Unit 5, I'm still here." I slowly turned my head toward the monitor. The figure on the screen hadn't moved, but something about it felt different now. Closer somehow, more defined. And what's been bothering me ever since is that when I checked the logbook later that night, there was already an entry written under my name, time-stamped an hour into the future, and it said, "Maintaining position at Tower Ridge, awaiting relief." The call came through on our secondary channel, the one we barely used, and the voice on it sounded exactly like mine. I was halfway through a routine perimeter check and dispatch flagged it. They asked why I'd requested backup at mile marker 12. I hadn't. I stopped walking. Wind moved through the pines like something dragging. I told them I never called it in. There was a pause, then dispatch said they had my ID code, my voice, and my exact phrasing. That's when they sent the other 2 rangers out to meet me. We weren't a big team, just 3 of us on night rotation. Me, Carter, and Ruiz. Carter drove up first, slow, headlights cutting across the gravel turnout. Ruiz followed behind him, already stepping out with his flashlight raised. Neither of them joked when they saw me. Carter asked me to repeat my last transmission. I told him I hadn't made one. Ruiz kept scanning the tree line like he expected someone else to answer. Dispatch came back over the radio and played the recording. It was short, clear, calm. Unit 3 requesting assistance, possible trespassers. Mile marker 12. It was my voice. Same cadence, same slight rasp at the end. Carter didn't say anything for a while. Then he asked where I'd been for the last 20 minutes. I told him exactly. Trail loop, South Ridge, standard sweep. My GPS tracker confirmed it. No gaps, no detours. Ruiz asked if anyone else had access to our codes. We all knew the answer. Not unless something had gone very wrong. We decided to check the area anyway. Procedure. 3-man approach, staggered spacing, radios open. The trail near mile marker 12 dipped into a shallow valley. Signal got spotty down there. That was normal. What wasn't normal was the light. About 50 yards in, we saw it. A dim lantern glow off trail. Not flickering like a campfire, steady, too steady. Carter signaled for us to stop. We listened. No voices, no movement. Just that low hum you sometimes get from electrical equipment. Except there shouldn't have been any. Ruiz whispered that it might be an unauthorized campsite. I didn't like how far off the path it was, or how quiet everything felt around it. We approached slow. Carter took lead. I covered left. Ruiz stayed right. As we got closer, the light shifted slightly, like someone adjusted it. Carter called out, "Park Rangers, identify yourself." No response. He called again. Same result. Then the light went out. Just like that. Complete darkness. We froze. You don't rush blind in that terrain. Too many roots, sudden drops. Ruiz clicked on his flashlight. The beam cut across empty ground. No tent, no person, just a patch of flattened grass and a small metal stand where the lantern must have been. But the lantern itself was gone. Carter stepped forward and checked the ground. Fresh footprints, deep, recent, leading away from us, uphill. That didn't make sense. Whoever it was would have had to pass us, unless they'd been there longer than we thought. Ruiz pointed out something else, a second set of tracks, older, leading toward the spot. Different tread pattern. He crouched and brushed Dode away. "These aren't hiking boots," he said. "More like work shoes." Carter radioed dispatch for a status check on any reported visitors or maintenance crews. Nothing. No permits, no alerts, just us. We followed the fresher tracks uphill. They moved fast, longer stride, slight drag on the left foot. I remember that detail because it matched something I'd heard earlier that night, a faint dragging sound while I was on patrol. I'd written it off as an animal. Now I wasn't so sure. The trail narrowed as we climbed. Trees closed in. Our radios started to crackle. Static bursts, then silence. I tried switching channels. Same result. Carter tapped his unit like that would help. Ruiz kept looking back down the slope. About halfway up, we found something that made all three of us stop. A ranger hat, standard issue, ours. It was hanging on a low branch like someone had placed it there carefully. Not dropped, not blown by wind, placed. Carter took it down, checked the inside band. Name tag was missing. Ruiz asked if we'd lost any deer recently. None of us had. Carter clipped the hat to his belt. We kept moving. The tracks led to an old service road that wasn't on our current maps. It used to be, years back, before they closed that section after a landslide. Most people didn't know it existed anymore. The footprints turned onto it. We followed. The air felt different there. Still, like the wind had decided to avoid that strip of land. About 100 yards in, we saw a vehicle, parked sideways across the road, engine off, lights off, just sitting there. It was an older model SUV. Mud splattered up the sides, no plates. Carter signaled for caution. We approached from both sides. Windows were tinted, but not enough to hide the inside completely. I angled my flashlight through the driver's side. Empty seat, keys still in the ignition. Ruiz checked the back. Also empty, but there were things in there. A clipboard, some folded maps, and 3 ranger jackets. Our jackets, same patches, same stitching. Carter opened the rear door slowly. No alarm, no sound. He picked up one of the jackets, turned it over. The name tag read, M. Carter. The next one had R. Ruiz. The last one had my name. We didn't say anything for a few seconds. Ruiz finally broke the silence. "This isn't funny," Carter agreed. He grabbed the clipboard, flipped through the papers. They were copies of our patrol logs. Dates matched the last 2 weeks, but there were extra entries, times we hadn't recorded, locations we hadn't visited. Someone had been documenting our movements, or pretending to. I felt a tightness in my chest that had nothing to do with the cold. Carter told dispatch what we'd found. The line cut out halfway through his sentence. Static swallowed the rest. Ruiz tried his unit. Same problem. No signal. We were out of contact. That's when we heard it. A voice, faint, behind us. Unit 3 requesting assistance. We turned at the same time. The road behind us was empty. Trees on both sides. No movement. The voice came again, closer this time, exactly the same as before. My voice. Carter raised his weapon slightly. Ruiz scanned the tree line with his light. "Show yourself," Carter called out. No answer. Just that voice repeating the same line, over and over, always from a slightly different direction. Like it was moving around us. I felt something shift in my understanding right then. This wasn't random. Someone was playing with us, deliberately. Ruiz whispered that maybe it was a recording device, hidden speakers. But why? And how would they know my voice so precisely? Carter told us to regroup at the vehicle, back to back. We did. The voice stopped. Silence again. Too clean. Carter checked his watch. Said we'd been out of contact for 6 minutes. Felt longer. Ruiz suggested we fall back to higher ground for signal. Carter agreed. We started moving back the way we came. That's when I noticed the footprints again. Only now, there were more of them. Not just the 2 sets we'd followed. Several. Overlapping. Some fresh, some older. All leading toward the vehicle. None leading away. I pointed it out. Carter looked. His expression changed. Ruiz swore under his breath. We picked up the pace. Not running, but close. The trees seemed tighter now. Branches scraping against each other with that dry, brittle sound. Halfway back to the trail, Ruiz stopped suddenly. He shined his light ahead. Something was hanging between 2 trees. A radio. One of ours. Still on. Still transmitting. My voice coming through it. Carter moved forward carefully. Checked the unit. It was mine. Or at least identical. Same serial number. Same wear marks. I instinctively reached for my own radio. It was still clipped to my vest. Carter looked between the two, didn't say anything. He turned off the hanging radio. The forest went quiet again. Ruiz asked the question we were all thinking. How many of these are out here? Carter didn't answer. We made it back to the main trail without further incident. Signal returned almost immediately. Dispatch came through, asking for status. Carter gave a brief report, left out the details about the voice, about the duplicate gear. He just said we'd found an abandoned vehicle and possible evidence of impersonation. They told us to return to base and wait for law enforcement backup. We agreed. The walk back felt longer than it should have. Every sound seemed amplified. Every shadow looked like it might move. Ruiz kept checking behind us. Carter stayed focused ahead. I kept listening for that voice. It didn't come back. Not on the trail. Not near the station. When we finally reached the ranger station, everything looked normal. Lights on, door locked, no signs of entry. We went inside. Carter headed straight for the logbook. Ruiz checked the equipment room. I stayed near the radio desk. Dispatch was still on the line. Carter flipped through the pages. Then he stopped. His hand froze on one entry. He called us over. I looked down. There, in my handwriting, was a note I didn't remember writing. Time-stamped 20 minutes before the call. Responding to unauthorized activity at mile marker 12. Proceeding alone. Ruiz asked if I'd written it. I said no. Carter compared it to earlier entries. It matched perfectly. Same pen pressure. Same slight slant. Everything. Dispatch asked for an update. Carter didn't answer right away. He was still staring at the page. And the radio on the desk crackled. A new transmission came through. Clear. Calm. Unit 3, requesting assistance. Possible trespassers. Mile marker 12. We all turned toward the speaker. The voice was mine again, but this time, it wasn't coming from the field. It was coming from inside the station. Ruiz slowly stepped toward the equipment room. Carter moved toward the back hallway. I stayed by the radio. The transmission repeated. Same line, same tone, over and over. I checked the source indicator. It wasn't external. It was routed to one of our internal units. Ruiz called out from the equipment room, his voice tight. You need to see this. Carter and I went in. There, on the charging rack, were 3 radios, all powered on, all broadcasting the same message. My voice, identical. Carter reached out and turned one off. The other 2 kept going. He turned those off too. Silence filled the room, heavy, uncomfortable. Ruiz pointed to the shelf above the rack. 3 more ranger hats sat there, clean, perfectly arranged. No name tags. Carter looked back at the logbook in his hand, then at me, then at Ruiz. We're not the only ones out there, he said quietly. No one argued. We secured the station, locked everything down. Law enforcement arrived about 40 minutes later. We gave our statements, showed them the vehicle location. They sent a team out to retrieve it. When they got there, it was gone. No tracks, no sign it had ever been there. They said maybe we'd misidentified the location, maybe stress had affected our perception. Carter didn't push back, neither did Ruiz. Neither did I. But later, when I went back to the logbook, just to check something, I noticed one more entry had been added, time-stamped after we returned, written in the same handwriting. All units accounted for. I don't remember writing that either, and the thing that still keeps me up is that the entry right below it was already there, like it had been waiting, and it simply read, "Not yet."